Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Redmen TV and your latest episode of the Transfer Podcast. We've got a special one this week. My name is Dan Clubb. That's not why it's special, though. The reason it's special is because I'm joined by the magnificent, the tanned Lewis Steele. Lewis, my friend, how are you? Right?
Very well, thanks. It's a lovely setting, but not quite as good as the one we did in Hong Kong and Tokyo, is it?
Going to take some topping them tomorrow. It's quieter than the one in Tokyo in particular.
Yeah.
That was cricket riddled, I'd say, those videos, but it was an absolute pleasure to be over there. What a joyful time it was, and what weather it was as well. Although you brought the weather back with you, I think it's nice here now.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? It rained a little bit yesterday, but it's beautiful now, ready for the new season. Hopefully we won't have to pack a jacket for that first game of the season. That's the main thing.
That is the main thing, yeah. Premier League Eve we are on now, of course. But that is not why we're here. We're here to speak about Liverpool in the transfer market, which has been a thing all of itself this summer. It's been absolutely hectic. Ray's watching with our first commenters. Hopefully a few more signings complete. Our best transfer window ever. Possibly the best window for any team ever, he says. Afternoon, lad. Sean Christian. Afternoon to yourself. Regan says, hopefully we can secure Isak and Guehi next. All in good time, my friend. All in good time. We've got a few things to talk about. We're going to start with the outs, then we're going to move on to the ins, then we've got a little special feature to wrap up, and I'll tell you all about that when we get there. But before we do, let's do some outs, shall we? Lewis, Kostas Tsimikas left out of the Community Shield defeat. I'm not sure if he's at Wembley, but he certainly wasn't in the squad. That, to me, was as clear a message as needed sending, I think, to him and his representatives that his future isn't particularly bright or promising at Liverpool. He's been an excellent footballer for us, but Milos Kerkez, Andy Robertson, that's two senior recognised left-backs, which is more than enough. Kostas Tsimikas, there were suggestions of Nottingham Forest and indeed other suitors. Where are we at with him?
Yeah, well, I think in the nicest way possible, it is the right time for Kostas to move on. I think he's very well liked in the dressing room. I think Salah is very good mates with him. But I think, again, nicest way possible, he's not at the level of Robbo or Kerkez. So it is the right time to move on. As you say, Nottingham Forest were keen. They still are keen. But it's nothing more than that at this stage. Leeds had showed an interest earlier in the window, but they've since signed a left-back, so maybe that rules them out, I think. But the fact he was left out, it pretty much says, as you say, off you go, Kostas, thanks for your service. Not quite sure how much Liverpool want for him, but I think they want a reasonable fee, but not too much, really. I can't see any clubs paying over maybe 10 million. And I'm sure there's clubs around the continent as well looking at him, but it does feel like he's played his last game for Liverpool now.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and that's obviously Liverpool's stance on it, if you like. And I think they're more than entitled to have that, clearly. And again, the pecking order would suggest that that probably is the way it is. And that's not to undermine what Tsimikas has been for us, because again, he's been the understudy to Robertson and indeed come in for Robertson when necessary really well and ably. But from his point of view, because we had a off-camera conversation, me and a few people in the office before, about just how much he loves playing for Liverpool, which is great. There's a lot to be said for that. But it doesn't feel like he's desperate to leave Liverpool necessarily.
No, it doesn't, because we've got to mid-August and he's still here when it's been pretty obvious from 2 months before the window opened that Liverpool would probably sign Kerkez or a left-back in general. So it's been pretty obvious that his days are numbered at Liverpool, apart from that time when Robbo had a little flirt with Atletico and you think, okay, you'd have to keep Tsimikas. But it doesn't feel like he wants to move. And it does seem harsh to say he's, lingering around like a bad smell, because he's not a bad smell. He's well liked in the dressing room. But in terms of the wages, they don't need 3 left-backs. They definitely don't need 3 senior left-backs. If Robertson or someone like that got injured, then maybe they can look at recalling Owen Beck, or, there's Luke Chambers in the academy as well, who's injured at the moment. But you don't need 3 senior left-backs. And also, Gomez can play there as well. So there's no reason why he needs to be here anymore. So I think he's won the league title, and it's probably the right time for him to move on, and I think he will.
Yeah, no, I certainly think so as well. And I've said this for a while now, and people may hate me for it, but kind of whatever. He, now especially, more than ever, for me, is somebody that needs to go and play regular football. He's good enough to do it, ultimately. So it's a compliment and kind of just saying, just go and play somewhere, mate. Harvey Elliott, somebody whose future also looks somewhat written in the stars, I think it's fair to say. The writing might be on the wall for Harvey, unfortunately, in many ways as well. Spoke to him away on tour, obviously, and he kind of alluded to the fact that he needs to consider his future. The most recent club index towards him, Lewis, was RB Leipzig, but we haven't really heard a lot on that for a few days. Is it kind of status quo when it comes to him?
Well, I think where we're at is RB Leipzig are going to sell Xavi Simons. I'm not sure where he'll end up, maybe Chelsea or City or something like that. And they want a replacement, and Harvey seems to be one of the candidates, but not the number one and only candidate. That doesn't mean to say that they're not in the race, they definitely are. We know that West Ham had shown an interest a few weeks ago. We know that Brighton had been mentioned earlier in the window. I think Palace maybe got mentioned a couple of days ago. So there's options, but you have to say Liverpool are asking for 50 million or maybe 40 with a buyback clause. And at the moment, no one's been willing to pay that. So it's either they keep him or they lower the asking price slightly. But maybe as the next 2 weeks go on, a club will think, yeah, we need a player of his ilk. But also there is the fact that Liverpool only have 3 senior forwards at the moment, and Elliott can obviously deputise on the right if he needs to. So maybe that's just something in the back of the minds to think, if we don't sell him, it's not the end of the world because we do need that extra body. So let's see what happens with Harvey.
Yeah, on that then, you've kind of alluded to it there, really. Do you think Liverpool would be quite content if that price isn't met? I'm going to ask about somebody else in a moment who might fall into that category, but do you think Liverpool would be quite happy with their lot? And I think kind of obviously, because Harvey Elliott is an exceptional footballer and one that has never let Liverpool down, quite the opposite really. So he might have reservations about sticking around because of the lack of game time he had last season, let alone this forthcoming one with Florian Wirtz added to the mix as well. But from a Liverpool standpoint, if September the 1st comes and goes and Harvey Elliott's still at Liverpool, they'd be more than happy with that, I take it.
I think so. I don't think they'd see it as a catastrophe if Harvey was still at the club because, you know, he can play in multiple positions. He's a good trainer. He's good in the dressing room in terms of bringing the mood up, and he's well liked. And I think Slot does like him as a person and the player, but maybe is just slightly off the level that he wants, especially with Wirtz coming in now. So I don't think they'll see it as a catastrophe by any means, but I think in terms of balancing the books, this is probably the best time to sell because he's just come off the back of that under-21s Euros. And I think that maybe this time next year they wouldn't quite get the money that we're asking for, unless, of course, he starts playing for Liverpool and bangs in a few goals, and then it's a whole different conversation, isn't it? So,
no, yeah. And also, I think you mentioned balancing the books. I'm going to touch on that. One of the questions later on is centred around that. But he's probably the prized possession, really, now in terms of saleable assets a Liverpool. Obviously, there are players that are worth more. But in terms of the 4 or 5, you mentioned obviously Tsimikas. I'm going to touch on a couple more now. He's the highest value one, ultimately. So, yeah, interesting to see what happens. And it would shock me if there weren't suitors knocking at Liverpool's door for Harvey Elliott as the window progresses because, again, he's a wonderful footballer. Federico Chiesa, next, mentioned on screen as well, not brought on at Wembley, which is just more evidence, if indeed it was needed, that whilst Arne Slot, and I love Arne Slot, says all the right things around Chiesa, when it boils down to it, when push comes to shove and you need someone, it's very rarely him. So there was murmurings earlier on the window that he was keen to go and keen to play because World Cup year, if Italy make it or not remains to be seen. But yeah, we haven't really heard of anything concrete on him at all, have we?
No, it's a weird one with Chiesa because I think it was quite damning on Sunday that he didn't come on because, for me, the one thing that Liverpool needed in that second half was a bit of an injection of a bit of energy or just something different because I thought they were excellent first half but really looked quite leggy after the break, especially last half an hour. And I thought, last season we look back at the way that Arne used the bench on about 60 minutes with the forwards. He needed that, but he still didn't turn to Chiesa on Sunday, and that said a lot to me. I was speaking to someone in Italy, was it last night, and I'm sure we'll come on to Leoni, which was the main reason I was speaking to him. But I did just ask at the end. I said, what's the crap with Chiesa, and the view in Italy is that it might be one that's late in the window. One of the Italian clubs will just go bang and snap him up, and I do think that will probably end up happening because I can't see him staying at Liverpool really now.
No, it's interesting and that might play into what we're going to speak about in the second part of the show about ins, because there's a question around, do we need to do more business beyond, obviously, the centrepiece of the conversation? Just finally, really, in terms of permanent out, especially, Ben Doak This is the one I mentioned a moment ago in terms of if Liverpool don't get the price that they want, they might be happy to keep him around. And he's a fascinating one to me. Obviously, he had a pretty good time of it in Middlesbrough for the first half of last season. Yeah. And somebody that Arne Slot has name-checked once or twice, seemingly, I know he did it mid-season last year. I can't remember what game it was, but definitely a press conference, just randomly brought Ben Doak into the conversation. So somebody who's in his thoughts, most definitely. But again, falls into the category like Guehi Isak of not being turned to last Sunday, so it's hard to know where we're at, I guess.
Yeah, I think that Doak is a really interesting one because I think maybe his reputation isn't as high as some of the other young lads who are in the first team picture now, like Rio and Trey. But if you look at everything Doak has done over the last 2 or 3 years, since he moved to Liverpool, really, he's a really talented kid. The only thing that's hampering him is his injury problems. Like you say there, really good first half of the season. I watched him on Sky a couple of times for Borough. Really exciting player, but he just was out for the whole second half, really. Season before that, he had an operation late December. I know that because I think I was on my dad's birthday meal when I got the text, Doak out for the season. It's weird how you remember things like that. But yeah, so Palace and Ipswich came in January with about 16 to 18 sort of million, and Liverpool's stance then was we like him a lot and we're not going to budge on that 20 to 25 million asking price we've got. So I just wonder whether if a club doesn't put the money up, whether Doak out of the 4 that we've mentioned would be the one that I'd keep around, because he can play on that right wing, so he can deputise for Salah if needed. He's played on the left a few times as well for the academy, and he's also in pre-season played down the middle. So he's not a perfect option, but if he can keep himself fit, he's not the worst 6th choice forward to have around, especially when you think of the fact that Chiesa played less than 10 times last season. It's not like you're going to be asking this lad to play every single week off the bench. So I don't think that's the worst thing that can happen if Doak can be one of them options this season.
No, I'm well in on Ben Doak sticking around and being an option. I don't think he's out the realms of possibility whatsoever, especially, like I say, when Arne Slot has brought him up once or twice, who's seemingly someone on his radar as well. Just finally, in terms of the potential outs between now and the end of the window, and I'm going to mention a few names here, but feel free to add to them as we go along. James McConnell, Stefan Pachesis, Jadon Dans, and I think in particular Lucas Stevenson looks like he might be heading out on another loan. But yeah, those 3 and some of the other youngsters in the round there, are we expecting movement on some of them?
Yes, I would say, I'd say there could be like 5 or 6 going out on loan in the next fortnight. So Lucas Stevenson, Dundee United, I think that's done if it's not even been confirmed yet. He had a good pre-season, to be fair to him, as he did last season. So I think he's one that the coaches like. Whether he'll make it, that's a different question. James McConnell has been injured for quite a while, 2 or 3 months, and that has put clubs off. But he played 60 minutes for the 21s last weekend. I saw him this morning at the AXA, actually. And I know that Ipswich and West Brom, I think it is, are keen on taking him on loan, as well as Bundesliga clubs. Who else is there? There's Kumas, Dans. Both need a loan. Dans, especially after missing all of last season, injured.
Well, he did loan him to Sunderland.
He did.
Shouldn't that be the plan again?
Yeah, well, maybe not Sunderland because they're now promoted, but like a championship club where he can play every week and get toughened up a bit. But the main thing is just playing. It doesn't matter who he's playing for, really. Just playing in men's football. And then Bajcetic trained with the first team squad this week. Slot does like him. Celta Vigo are keen, I think, but let's see what happens with him, because maybe Slot will think that they are a man light in that midfield department. Maybe. So that one's not as clear cut. Maybe it's one to ask Slot when we run out of questions next week. Yeah,
please do. I'm a big admirer of Stefan Pachesis. I think people are quick to forget how good he was when he first sort of broke into Liverpool's first team. And obviously the overplaying him led to injuries, and that led to further complications. Really disappointing time in Austria with Pep Lijnders, of course. Regathered his form somewhat at the back end of last season out in Spain, but yeah, he's bulked up. I'll tell you that for free. He looks much bigger than he did. I'm just fascinated by the whole thing, but I do wonder if it's sort of one goes, one stays on McConnell and Pachetis, because obviously similar in terms of position and what have you. But I think Arne Slot is quite smitten on James McConnell as well. He seems to be a big fan of his as well.
Yeah, he absolutely loves him. I think I remember the PSV away game. I asked Slot, I was like, is there any of these lads going to go out on loan? He was like, certainly not one of them because he's impressed me so much. And I was like, oh, right, you mean Jayden Dansby? And he was like, no, McConnell, he was that good. So he blocked a loan. I think he had one in place. I can't remember who it was, maybe like a Swansea or Wickham or someone like that. But Slot said no. He really likes him, apparently. So one for the future.
Yeah, again, I think I've been quite impressed from what I've seen from him, including the Carabao Cup final. But yeah, let's wait and see what happens on them. Wonderful. Right, that is the first part of the show done. So we're going to take a quick break, easy for me to say. And we're back in a few minutes with ins, including Leoni, Isak, and of course, Marc Guehi, and that special feature. I'll see you in a minute. We've uncovered a host of Liverpool legends that we believe are owed medals from seasons in the past. It startled me, some of the people we're discussing here, because you just don't expect it.
Jan Mulvey, what a pass for the football.
He made the game look easy.
Couldn't bring into the team, he was one of the best teams the club's ever had.
Going back to the group I was with, Sammy Lee was the one who made it into the first team, but he had to get ahead of Jimmy Case.
Sammy just was so in the infancy of his career.
Although it was frustrating, I knew even when the time come, then I'd be ready.
Phil Neal, the most decorated Liverpool player of all time.
Dad liked him, and Liverpool signed him.
The chief scout, he said to me, I went home and told Bob Paisley, go and buy him now.
I don't think anyone can speak about David Fairclough without saying super sub.
Part of the conversation I had with Bob Paisley while I was away seemed to intimate that perhaps they were tiring a little bit of me.
Gary Gillespie was huge.
Tasked with the job of breaking up Adam Hansen and Mark Lawrenson.
Ronnie Rocket. He just took the league by storm.
No one was going to knock him off the ball. Battering ram who could go through defenders.
Now it's about getting the Liverpool legends. You've just heard all about the medals. They were never officially awarded. Hey everyone, welcome back. That is a minute and a half of the best documentary ever made by anyone ever. So do go and check it out on YouTube. No, but seriously, do go and check it out because we're all very proud of it. Myself in particular, obviously. But yeah, and that is a thing that will be happening soon. So keep an eye out for that. Hopefully things that will be happening soon are incomings to Anfield because, yeah, we need more. It looks as though all but confirmed this morning, Lewis Steele, with you in presence at the press conference, Arne Slot admitted there was an agreement in place between Parma and Liverpool for the capture of Giovanni Leoni. Before we dive into the player and what it means for Liverpool, etc., in terms of the fee, I think we know. And in terms of, do we know any sort of more details on length of contract? Are we privy to that sort of information yet? Are we pretty sure he's in Liverpool now doing his medical?
If the traffic's good, he'll be in Liverpool now.
Okay.
He was landing in Manchester Airport about 12:30, I believe.
Okay.
So he should be just about pulling up now if passport control wasn't too long at the queues and that, but I'm sure he's got some special exit.
You won't be queuing, mate. Don't worry about that.
But yeah, 26 million. Liverpool have liked him. Well, I was going to say for a while, but he's only really been on the radar for a season or two. But someone did tell me yesterday that Rich Hughes has, as we know, brilliant contacts in Italy, and he will have known about Leoni for much longer than before he made his debut. And they believe they've got the best young centre-back in Europe, which is something they've wanted to do for a few years. I think I've said maybe on this show or everywhere that Liverpool wanted that young centre-back who can eventually grow into Virgil van Dijk's replacement. They went for Lenny Yoro, Dean Howson,
Colwell,
Levi Colwell.
Yeah.
So there's three, and realistically, there's probably someone else that we don't know about. Joel Hatto from Ajax this summer missed out on him as well because they couldn't quite just say to him, you're going to play route, whereas Chelsea may have been able to. So they've got the man, and he looks the part as well.
No, it's interesting. I was going to ask you about Richard Hughes' role in it, and I assumed it would be a big one, not just because of his literal job title, but because of his Serie A connections as well. So that makes a whole host of sense, yeah. But in terms of, you said there, trying to convince players, and we might have this conversation with Marc Guehi as well, there's going to be enough football for him. On Leoni, there's a lot of rumblings, suggestions, mainly from fans, that he might be loaned back, or he might be loaned somewhere else at least, but he's been brought in for the here and now, clearly. He's seen as a viable contender to have a squad role at least. Like, are we sure, or are we certain, or we got any sort of guidance on what that might look like for him? Because he's 18, 17, say our appearances last season. Like, he's still very, very young, very inexperienced, really. But he's been brought in to be a first teamer now, by the looks of it.
Yeah, there's definitely no loan in the pipeline at the moment. Obviously, if we get to January and he's played 0 games, then maybe that could change. But as it stands, Liverpool see him as a first-team player now. And I presume he will join up with training from the start of next week or whenever they're back in training after the Bournemouth game. So he'll be having his medical this afternoon. But yeah, obviously Van Dijk and Konate are the main two. Gomez is still the third choice as it stands, and he's now fit again. Maybe fit enough to be on the bench tomorrow, not quite sure. And Leoni does come in as the fourth choice, and he knows that. But someone in Italy close to him basically said to me, as soon as Liverpool came knocking, it was an immediate yes. There was no thought about it. There was a bit of talk earlier in the week that Inter were ahead of Liverpool, but I never actually heard that. People were telling me if Liverpool make their proposal, Leoni is all about that. And he looks up for the challenge of, moving up that pecking order. He's one of them players who, yes, he's only played a handful of games, but people in the scouting community can say things like, as soon as we saw him, we knew he was the one. A bit like, you're into your cricket. There's that story about Joe Root who, was out in the... He was. Some people said after an over of watching him, I knew he'd be like a future England captain. Yeah. So I'm not saying that he's going to go on and be Italy. He's the next Maldini or the next Baresi, but he is that typical Italian build, and he looks good.
Well, what he is, he's physically at least mature beyond his years, because he's a monster at 18. Yeah. Like, it's frightening, quite frankly, to watch him. And obviously, we've seen clips of him since the interest became really, really apparent and really, really concrete. And it became obvious he was going to be a Liverpool player, really. And he's clearly highly regarded amongst his peers in Italy and clearly by Liverpool as well, in order to go and spend such a high amount of money on him. So I'm really excited by the deal, for what it's worth. I really am. I think us doing this sort of thing, it is a real sort of another statement of intent, really, in terms of what we're all about. And as you mentioned, future-proofing and future planning. And I think there's a lot to be said from his point of view as well, Lewis, in terms of, like, again, 18, little in the way of experience. For him to have the mindset and be sort of confident of his own ability to leave his comfort zone, because Italians are renowned for not leaving Italy, actually. There's been some wonderful Italian footballers down the years who's never really left Serie A, but he's looked at it and he's had interest from the bigger fish, if you like, in Italy. But he's gone, no, I'm backing myself to force my way into the reckoning in the conversation at Liverpool. There's a lot to be said for that as well. Yeah,
apparently his mentality is just spot on. He thinks that he's got a lot of belief. He thinks that he will be an Italy international within the next 12 to 18 months. And, if he carries on in this trajectory, it'll be a lot quicker than that. He'll surely have eyes on that World Cup even next year if Italy get there, as you say. He's been compared to Nesta. I just asked one of the Italians, I was like, who do you compare him to? And they were like, Nesta. So I don't know if that's good or bad, really. I mean, it was pretty good. It's not Maldini. Yeah. But yeah, someone also said in terms of the commandeering nature of him, he's a bit Van Dijk-like, but I don't know whether that was just an easy comparison. But yeah, he looks the part, and I think that it's a good signing for Liverpool, especially when you do note the things about Van Dijk, 34, Konate out of contract. So there's no guarantee that them two are going to be around, certainly not forever, but maybe not for after the next 2 years. So this is the man that they think that they can build the defence around. So it's all good.
It is all good. It absolutely is all good. And it seemingly idolises Van Dijk. And let's be honest, any young defender in the world would be stupid not to at this point. Marc Guehi, let's touch on him now. Community Shield winner, as he is. Somewhat conflicting reports, really, on this one, I think, Lewis, in sort of the past 48 hours, ever since that Wembley showing at the weekend, because Steve Parish comes out and says what he says immediately post-match, basically suggesting that we've kind of got to sell him now, otherwise our hands are tied somewhat. He won't sign a new contract. We need to cash in at this point. The implications financially of not getting in the Europa League and ending up in the Conference League might have had a knock-on impact as well on this. But there's then reports coming out yesterday saying like they're happy to just sit and wait, and he's happy to stick around and leave on a free. So ultimately, where are we at on this one?
Yeah, well, I was there when Steve Parish said that, and he did stumble over it for a few seconds before he said it. He didn't want to admit it. He reluctantly admitted that they will have to probably sell Marc Guehi. And I think that is where we're at now. They are reluctant to sell, but I think in the back of their minds, being realistic, they know that they probably will have to. So multiple people told me on Tuesday, I think, that a deal was close. Okay. So I've got no reason not to trust that. Multiple people then told me on Wednesday that maybe Guehi could be tempted to see out his contract at Palace and then move next summer, which does make a bit of sense when you think of the fact that Konate maybe has 1 foot out of the door next summer. So maybe that is something to consider. But Guehi does want to move to Liverpool, but I can't see him kicking up a Alexander Isak style fuss in terms of, please let me leave. I think he's got deep respect for Palace. He's the captain. He's won 2 trophies now. England international as well, which is another consideration with the World Cup year. I'm not sure he's going to force an exit, but if Palace do buckle and say, we will have to sell you, then he will be all in and he wants to move to Liverpool.
Interesting. Okay, in terms of that valuation, it's come down significantly from where Crystal Palace and Newcastle were at last year and what they were sort of squabbling over and trying to make that deal happen. Are we at the stage now where Liverpool have got their price and Palace have got theirs, and they're sort of not miles apart, but there is some disparity between the two, it's fair to say?
Yeah, so I think in June when the interest first became clear, the numbers were Palace wanted 50, Liverpool didn't really want to pay more than 25 or 30. I think now it's more Palace want 35, Liverpool don't want to pay any more than 25 or 30 again. But it sounds like 35 could be the number if a deal was to be done that could get a deal done. Someone said to me earlier that he wants his future resolved before the weekend, which doesn't give us that much time. No. But he doesn't want to go into Palace's first game, which I think is away at Chelsea, his old club, who get a sell on, by the way. He doesn't want to go into that game not knowing whether he's all in, this is the club I'm at for the season, or whether he's leaving. But yeah, I think 35 is a fair fee, even if Liverpool don't see it, because you're getting an England international, 25-year-old, one of the most reliable and consistent injury-free defenders in the Prem. So I think he ticks a lot of boxes.
Without a shadow of a doubt. I think 35 million, and listen, who am I to tell anyone in Liverpool's recruitment team what isn't a fair fee ultimately? But yeah, you get in, again, to the point about Newcastle haggling last season with Palace and Steve Parish. Like, they were upwards of 60 million at that point, and he hasn't changed. If anything, he's developed as a footballer. He's won an FA Cup and a Community Shield since then as captain. If anything, more stock should have been added to his valuation. But Liverpool play hardball, and more often than not, Liverpool get what they want in the market. So I think it was said about the Diaz exit, wasn't it, how much on Richard Hughes' terms that was. So I can't anticipate this will be any different. And maybe the final one we're going to talk about in terms of the ins, Alexander Isak, the saga that never goes away, never ends. All but handing in a transfer request, I think it's fair to say at this point. Possibly somewhat persona non grata up at Newcastle, down tools, refusing to train, refusing to play. It's just a bit of a mess, I think. What are we expecting in terms of... And it's the impossible question, so bear with me. Just tell us what you know, what you understand, where we're at, like... Are we any clearer at all on what the future may hold on this one?
No, we're pretty much as we were 2 weeks ago, maybe even 3 weeks ago now. We're pretty much where we were when we were in Hong Kong, and that was Liverpool. Well, Newcastle said he's not for sale, but then they said he is for sale at this price. Liverpool said we're done, but they are still interested. So there's a lot of jiggery pokery going on by both clubs, I would say. And we are a bit of a standoff. But Alexander Isak is desperate for the move, and I think Newcastle will reluctantly, if they get a striker, they will sell him. I think Newcastle are a bit hot on Samu at Porto. Don't know if he's any good or not, but that's not our problem. And I think if they do get him in, they will say, all right, off you go, mate. We're going to have to let you go. I don't think Liverpool will go up to the 150. I think maybe 130, including add-ons, would be where a deal would be done. But we've still got, 2.5, 3 weeks of the window to go. So there is breathing room. We're not like talking on 2 days before the end. So there's breathing room for that, and there is for Guehi. It does still seem more likely, gut feeling, that he will end up at Liverpool, but there's a lot of ifs and buts and maybes in this saga. No one truly knows, not even him knows where he will end up.
No, it doesn't feel like that. The one thing we do know, like I say, is that I don't think he's going to be pulling on the black and white stripes of Newcastle anytime soon, and that may in itself cause Newcastle to act in terms of the hierarchy, because all of a sudden, if he doesn't play this weekend, like we can't imagine he will do, obviously Liverpool travels to St James's Park thereafter. If he doesn't feature in that one as well, that game in itself might be a bit of a hurdle that needs to be crossed, because the prospect or the thought of them selling their prized possession, their prized asset to Liverpool, and then him playing against them might just not sit well at all. So they might just wait for that game to be done and dusted, and then the conversation happens. Who knows? But yeah, it's been a fascinating watch, and obviously your colleague Craig Hope has been right across it as well. So yeah, stay tuned for what happens next on that one. Just finally, before we do move on, and talk just quickly before we do wrap up on the Isak stuff, you mentioned the price point there that may well get the deal done. That's not Liverpool only being willing to spend that sort of money, because in terms of like PSR headroom, they're still well clear on that sort of stuff. That's just what it might take to do it, I guess.
Yeah, they've certainly got the money to. They could spend 250 million on him if they wanted to, I think, because they've got so much headroom in that PSR. There's a number of reasons for that. They didn't spend any money last summer or the 2 Januaries either side of that, really. Apart from like the odd 10 million here and there. They've got loads and loads of money coming in from Premier League winning prize money. They've got loads and loads of money coming in from the new Adidas deal. If you look at the net spend, they're actually only about 105, 110. Well, maybe with Leoni, it's more like 135 million down this summer. They've already recouped 190, I think, off the top of my head, in terms of player sales. That will probably go up to 250-ish. Maybe more with the players that we mentioned at the top of the show. So the money's there and the willing is there. It just all depends on Newcastle. And, if I was Newcastle, I would reluctantly sell him because think of the players you could get in return, especially for a player who doesn't want to be there. Yeah,
because also, what version of Isak would they get back? If they managed if Eddie Howe did pull off a miracle and reintegrate him into the squad and get him back up and running again, I'm not sure you're going to get the fan on all cylinders, absolutely desperate to score goals. He might want to apologise, and maybe he will, but it doesn't feel like they're going to get Alexander Isak 10 out of 10 ever again, even if they did, you know what I mean? So it's a fascinating one. Like I say, the reporting of it's been really interesting and trying to change the narrative, and the daggers have been out up in Newcastle for him, trying to paint him out to be the bad guy, and there's the flip side of that. Maybe he didn't quite get the promises that he'd been suggested might happen in terms of contracts and stuff like that. So yeah, wild. And just finally, before we move on to our special feature to end the show, there's been a lot, and we touched upon it earlier on, this especially rings true if the likes of Chiesa, Harvey Elliott, and indeed Ben Doak were to move on in whatever guise that look like. But there's been a lot of clamour and a lot of, do we still need to do this? We wanted centre-backs, we want Isak. But the next question on most people's lips, people are happy with midfield, is there still room for that winger, versatile forwards? There's been names along the way. Anthony Gordon at one point, Rodrigo more recently, Malik Fofana at one point as well. Is there anything at all in terms of like names or rumours or just silent whispers about who we might be in for there?
I really like the phrase "silent whispers." Could be the name of a show.
There's a song about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, if Isak doesn't come, I think they will go for a winger, and they will be doing some work in the background just in case. I don't think it'll be Rodrigo. Maybe Fofana, but I wouldn't like to be quoted on that. There's just a name that hasn't been emphatically shot down, basically. Yeah, it's an interesting one because, as I say, the money is there, but obviously a lot of their eggs are in the Isak basket. But what I was told maybe 2 months ago was they want a versatile forward who can play across front three, and they won't sign a number 9 for the sake of it, but Ekitike is that number 9. So they've got the man in that sense, but they definitely need another body in that front three. So I think if Isak doesn't happen, they will have to go in for a winger.
Okay, interesting. Right, sound. That is it for my agenda. Now it's over to everybody at home, and the moment we've all been waiting for. It's time for Balls of Steel, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, in terms of feature titles, it doesn't really get much better than that, does it? So we've had the serious chat now. Now we're going to have just a little bit of fun, 10 minutes, something like that. And feel free to bombard the chat with questions as well, because I've got one or two of my own. I'm going to pick one or two of yours as we go along. And I've got the Champions League trophy behind me, which has got scrunched up balls of paper with questions from our social media viewers in. So this is about as high-tech as it gets at Redmen TV, this right now. So I'm going to get Lewis. I'm going to shift the Champions League over to him. I'm going to pick out one of these balls of steel and then unravel it and attempt to read my handwriting, and we'll see what the question says. So please, feel free. Give him a jiggle around. Do a Rod Stewart-style delve in. There we go. Pick one out. Anyone you want. There you go. Yeah. Now unravel it, and we'll see if you can read it, and we'll go from there, shall we? They're all legitimate. I have vetted them, by the way. We had a good few, and I've got rid of some. What's it say? Do you know? Told you his writing was bad. Let me read it. I'll read it. It's fine. I can read my own handwriting. It says, guy on social media, which was literally the guy's handle. Oh, here we go. Good one. Do you think people are ignoring our sales? Now, this was slightly more wordy than that. It was in terms of the net spend. I think the narrative has very much been, wow, look how much Liverpool are spending, without taking into account the sales.
Yeah, I think certainly non-Liverpool fans are maybe ignoring that. But when you look at the net spend this summer, I think Liverpool are about 5th or 6th. Not quite sure on that. That was something I saw about a week ago, so it may have changed. But certainly in terms of cold hard spending, they've spent more than anyone. But also they're the champions, so they've got more money to spend. But yeah, people are ignoring that. That's just the way of football. I think people always ignore things to suit their own agenda, and people always frame things. When people talk about incomings, they delete the add-ons. When they're talking about outgoings, they add on the add-ons. That's a good point. So that's just how it works in football. But yeah, we should be commending Rich Hughes for getting, as I say a minute ago, 190 mil. It's a lot of money, and that's why they've been allowed to spend so much this summer, or been able to spend so much, because they're selling wisely and they're getting good money for people who are good players, but they 65 million profit on Luis Diaz after 3.5 years. Great deal for a 28-year-old. So they're getting good money for players who maybe other clubs would have just let them go and release them on a free in 2 years. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tyler Morton's another example. I'm a big fan of Tyler, as people know, but to get 15 million plus the 20% sell-on for him is remarkable business, really. I'll take one from the chat before we dive back into my Champions League trophy behind me. Lee Guy, should we get the PSG goalie for when Ali leaves us? Simple as that. I mean, I take Donnarumma, by the way, but I think Mamardashvili might be the answer there.
Yeah, no, they've got Mamardashvili for that, haven't they? I do think Donnarumma will end up in the Prem this summer, but
anywhere in particular?
I could see him at City, especially with Edison probably maybe leaving, or United. Just think of United, and I think he'd be a massive upgrade on both Onana or Edison. So let's see what happens.
No, top keeper, especially on his line. Right, delve back in, go for it. Let's see what we got next. What a feature this is. This is why you come to Redmen. Look at us right now. Come on, can you read this one?
It's good. It's good.
Is it the one?
It's from you.
It's the one. Yes, this one's from me. This is the one I wanted to pick out most of all. You can read this one, can't you? Surely.
Yeah. Who is the best singer out of Ghost, Pierce, and you? Wow. So obviously Dan was present when we did.
I was present. I was there. I know the answers to this, by the way, but I want your take first.
I have watched the footage back since. Like a football manager would be going over the footage of a match. I would say James
Pierce.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
He hit them high notes really well.
Yeah, he did. No,
and he owned the stage, the way he was walking up and down.
His stage presence was second to none. Yeah, there's no way about
I'd pay
that.
money to see him.
Yeah. I was tempted on the night. James Pierce, there you go. Man of many talents. Look at that.
I'm only saying that because Ghosty normally sits here.
That's
so I'm
true, actually. Yeah.
Trying to show him who's boss.
Knock him down a peg or two. Don't get above his station. Sound delve back in. Feel free. We'll have a couple more, and then we'll move on.
No more about singing.
No more about singing, unfortunately. That was it. Can you read that one?
John Baker.
John Baker says,
how many more signings?
Yeah, simple as that. How many more signings Liverpool going to make?
These are like hieroglyphics, by the way. I don't know if you can. How many more signings? Well, including Leoni, I'd say. I do think they'll end. I think they are more likely to not sign a forward, if not Isak. So I will go with 3. Let's be positive.
Three more. So
including Leoni.
Yeah, okay. So
Yeah,
Leoni, Guehi. Let's say Leoni, Guehi, Isak.
Yeah,
I'll say that. You don't need to say that.
Yeah.
I'll say that. Okay.
I
Your
think
reputation.
I think I'm more likely than both. More likely than not on both.
Okay.
But I would have said 2.5, but that doesn't. I can't say that, can I?
Can't.
No, but let's be optimistic.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. That's good. Right, I'll ask you my question now, which wasn't the karaoke one, in spite of it saying my name on it. I will ask Will Wright and the excitement levels around him. What's been, because he's been there for a week and a bit now. He's done some training. He's played in the game. Like, what have you heard? What are people saying about him? And in terms of listen, when Liverpool signed him as well, what was the noise at that point?
Yeah, well, he's. I saw him at the exit this morning. Actually, I mean, you can't really judge much off 10 seconds of walking past someone, but he looked like he'd settled in terms of he was laughing and joking with the likes of Cade Gordon and I can't remember who else was there, but these sorts of people. He is very highly rated. I remember when it was first put on my radar that they liked him. So a season in the 21s will be good for him. I'd be interested to get down, I think. I'll try and go to a 21s game next fortnight, see what he's all about. But yeah, people I speak to say he is a very good prospect for the future. And I was speaking to someone a few days ago who's like big in, he used to work for Liverpool, and he was saying the reason that Rob Page was hired is he's been a manager before. He can give them that realism of men's football and the demands of men's football. And I think that's going to be really good for the 21s going forward. Obviously, we all love Barry, great man. But Rob Page just gives them a bit more in terms of readying them for that step up. And let's see how it goes this season. But I'll be interested. I may see you down there.
No, you certainly will, mate. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, and I think that's a very good point. Actually, I didn't really consider that when it comes to Rob and his experiences. In fact, he has had that first-hand experience of being a senior men's coach. And as for Barry, I'm pretty sure he got a job yesterday.
Yeah, England
under 16. Good for him. I've said it a few times. I wish him all the best. Yeah. I'll bring one from YouTube now, and then we'll wrap up with one more from the Champions League. HSN1_3 says, is that your Christian name? Can you see Liverpool going in for Belieber or Wharton? Now, Belieber might be off the board soon, potentially. Hopefully not. But yeah, those types of players, those profiles of players, I don't think they're quite as pressing now because how good Gravenberch has been.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, Adam Wharton in particular, we saw again on the weekend how good he is. So I don't think Liverpool should be dismissed from those sorts of conversations.
No, I don't think so. It's just the fact that, I'd say definitely not this summer on both of them, but let's see what happens in the next year. But Gravenberch, as we say, is so good. You know, if we were sat here this time last year, we would all be saying they desperately need to sign a midfielder. And it's testament to Gravenberch that no one is really that bothered about midfielders anymore. McAllister, again, truly unbelievable footballer on his day. And Szoboszlai's looked good in that deeper role as well. Curtis Jones is still knocking about. Stefan Bajcetic, Endo. So I think they are well stocked in that position now. So I would say probably not on either of them. But let's see where the land lies a year down the line.
Yeah, hopefully it lies at Adam Wharton, because my word. One more. We've got a few more to pick from. Pick one more out of there. I don't know what's left, so let's see what happens.
This one.
Go for that one.
Your hieroglyphics.
Yeah, I can only apologise. It was done in a massive rush,
big one.
my handwriting is also terrible. Full stop. So let's do it.
Ryan1892 says, what's the likelihood of Konate leaving this summer with Madrid sniffing?
Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah.
We can expand that to just Konate's future if you want.
Yeah. It does seem a little bit late in the window for him to leave. But there is a problem and a big conversation to be had about his long-term future, because there's been no progress whatsoever really in terms of extending that deal, and it will be a topic that dominates conversations going into the autumn when this transfer window is forgotten about. People start to look ahead, and that will be one that they look at. Obviously we don't know what will happen with Guehi, but if Guehi comes in, maybe everyone will feel a little bit more relaxed about Konate leaving. There was a bit of talk about 2 or 3 weeks ago that Real Madrid would come in with an offer for this window, but that's not materialised, or certainly hasn't yet. But they need to sort out Konaté's future because they can't allow. I know they got money for Trent in the end, but it would just be bad for them to let another one go to Madrid for free.
It's
not for peanuts.
No, but it's not in keeping with the stature of Liverpool.
No.
Like, people can have conversations about the size and the power of Real Madrid all they like, but obviously I'm biased in this conversation. But this is Liverpool. You know what I mean? Like, and we shouldn't be allowing players just to get up and leave whenever they want to go to Real Madrid, from what it's worth from my point of view anyway. Lewis, top man, thank you so much for joining me. Before we do wrap up, let people know where you've got a YouTube these days as well, so let people know where they can see you on screen more.
If you go to my Twitter profile, Lewis Steele _, you will find my bio, which has a link tree, which has all my links. Okay. YouTube, TikTok, the lot.
Make sure you do it. Make sure you do it, because he's a good man and he's good at what he does as well. And thank you again for joining me. Everybody else, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for participating in this one. Take care. I'll see you soon.